All right, so my name is Jasana Taylor, and I'm the Alumni Engagement Manager here at North Park University. And each month we host Compass Talks, which is a lifelong learning series where we invite faculty, staff, and other members of our community to give talks and discussions on a topic of interest. So today we have Madalynn Baez. She is a professional opera singer, along to being an engineer and a lab manager and a graduate student and a voice teacher. So she does a lot of wonderful things and she's very involved in our community. And today she's going to give a talk on what do you want to be when you grow up. So, yes, very excited to see what she has to say today.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for the introduction, Jasana. And thanks for giving me the opportunity to talk today. I am just so grateful to be part of the North Park community. And I'm really excited to be able to share about the topic of vocation and discovering and claiming your calling, something that I'm so passionate about. That's been mysterious to me and I'm sure a lot of others for a long time. And I hope that everybody will be able to take away something from today's presentation, whether that's something that helps you in your journey or whether it's something that is that you learn that you're able to pass on to someone else. So I'll go ahead and get started here with my slides. I wanted to give you a little bit more background about who I am. So as Jasana said, my name is Madalynn Baez. My self-assigned titles are opera singing engineer, professional second guesser, which is the one I think highly qualifies me to speak on this topic, and life enthusiast. I'm always excited about something, and I think that life is more fun that way. Um, to share a little bit of background information about my education and my career, I went to Wartburg College in Waverly, Iowa for my undergraduate studies and received my Bachelor of Science degree in engineering science and my Bachelor of Arts degree in mathematics. While I was at Wartburg, I also sang a lot. I was a section leader in the choir, sang in several operas, and led a couple of worship groups on campus. And then I worked full time at John Deere for about 6 years after graduating from Wartburg. And I had roles between manufacturing engineering, operations, and quality engineering. Um, as I'm sure a lot of people did, I did a lot of soul searching during COVID and ended up starting my studies here at North Park in the fall of 2023. As Jasana mentioned, I'm a graduate student here currently, studying for my Master of Music and Vocal Performance, which is, markedly different from my bachelor's degrees in engineering and math. I'll get into that more later, maybe. And then also in the spring of 2024, I had this incredible opportunity to transition from working full-time in industry to actually working full-time here at North Park, as the lab manager for our or Physics and Engineering department. And it's just been so fun getting more plugged into the community, and meeting more students and the stuff that we have going on in the engineering program is super awesome and fun to watch. So, on top of all of that, I also maintain a pretty healthy performance schedule. I'm a professional section leader in a church choir here in the city. I'm a supplemental singer with the Grant Park Chorus, and I've done opera roles and concert work with a whole bunch of organizations in the area here and throughout the Midwest. So I don't know, I think I'm an interesting person. Some of the pictures that you can see on the slide here, I've got a singing picture. I've got um, playing with our virtual welding equipment. There's a picture of me in a combine tire from my days at John Deere. And then actually the TED Talk picture is from a TEDx talk that I was able to give on a similar subject when I was back in undergrad. So I'm excited to be here and able to talk about the same subject. with you guys today. So just to briefly kind of overview what we're going to be talking about today, I'm going to sort of define vocation, give a little background into the term and kind of how we see it as a society today. I'm going to talk a little bit about the expectations and the pressures that are faced by individuals today that are trying to figure it out for themselves, some of the roadblocks they might run into, and misconceptions that we have as a collective society about vocation. We'll then transition from definitions and interpretations to action items, which will be the exciting part for you guys, I think. So if you still have questions about what you're meant to do, I'll share some helpful tips for persisting in that search. And if you think you've got it figured out, I'll share a bit also with you about how to help others who still may be struggling to answer that question for themselves. So, to get started here, what the heck is vocation? I've taken the liberty here of grabbing a few dictionary definitions from the internet. Um, the first one from Merriam-Webster, a summons or a strong inclination to a particular state or course of action. From Britannica, a strong desire to spend your life doing a certain kind of work. And from Oxford, a strong feeling of suitability for a particular career or occupation. So, kind of a range of terms used to describe the word vocation, but all kind of pointing towards something that we feel called to do, um, and it's some sort of activity. That's about as general as I can make it. Just for funsies, here's a little bit of the etymology behind the word vocation. It's from the old French word vocation, which means call, consecration, calling. And this old French word is from the Latin word vocationem, which is a conjugate of vocare, which is the verb to call. Um, just in case you needed a fun fact of the day. And now we'll kind of transition into talking about vocation more as a concept instead of just a word. So uh, I wanted to highlight this particular framing of the word vocation. I went to a college of the Lutheran Church, and we were very interested in the topic of vocation and how to kind of help our students understand what it is that they're being called to do in the world. That's a big thing with the Lutheran Church. Um, so I did a lot of reading about it in college, and so Frederick Buechner is an American writer and theologian. He wrote in his book, Wishful Thinking, the kind of work God usually calls you to is the kind of work, A, that you need most to do, and B, that the world most needs to have done. So, in other words, your vocation is where your deep gladness meets the world's deep need. I love a good chart. I love a good Venn diagram. So I hope that this is a good visual of that. Basically, if you're living out your vocation, you should be doing something that's bringing you joy, as well as adding some sort of goodness into the world. You've kind of got to have both of those pieces of the puzzle, if you will. So now that we've kind of explored the definition of the word vocation, and sort of the concept at a high level, I want to get into some of the expectations and pressures that are associated with the term. Um, so the question, what do you want to be when you grow up, um, sort of alludes to what we're going to be talking about today. And just kind of the fact that vocation seems to be misinterpreted sometimes. We'll circle back to our definitions. So you'll notice here that I highlighted a few of these terms in red. Uh, as I was pulling these definitions, I was really interested to see the broad range of terms that are used to define the word vocation. From the first definition saying a state or a course of action, which seems really general, to work, which is, a little less general, to career or occupation, which to me is very specific. Um, and between the terms, state, action, work, career, occupation, all of these terms have different connotations associated with them, right? So while we're talking about expectations and pressures around the concept of vocation, what I really want to hone in on is vocation being synonymized with career. Because that is where a lot of the pressure comes from when individuals are attempting to discover their vocation, in my experience, and also with others that I've seen sort of struggle with this. Um, Now, if we go back to our Venn diagram, framing these things in the context of career, work, um, I think it loses its luster a little bit. In the interest of practicality, right? People don't generally go for deep gladness in their career search. The goal looks more like job satisfaction, which is good. Job satisfaction should be associated with career. But job satisfaction and deep gladness are two very different things. Um, so in searching for a career, wanting to ensure that you're meeting the world's deep need is something that some may consider, but I will say it's not something that all have the luxury to prioritize when they're considering choosing a career. A lot of the time, people that come from less privileged backgrounds, when they are looking at choosing a career, they might not have the mental space, the practical space, to think about fulfillment, when they're choosing work that they're going to be doing in their lives. So that's just something to consider, while we kind of go about life and think about what we want to do and advise others as well. Now, I do want to play devil's advocate here for a second. There are a few really good things that come from synonymizing vocation and career, and I want to review those. So, yes, it does make objective sense to try to find a career that aligns with your vocation. I wish it aligned with vacation. Um, so we do want to find something that brings us joy and that helps the world. That is, if you're doing something that brings you joy and helps the world for the majority of your life, that is a recipe for fulfillment. Um, so yeah, it makes sense, given that the average person spends about a third of their life at work. It makes sense that they would want their work to be something that is that type of fulfilling for them. Also, your work is definitely a part of your identity. Um, Thinking back, I don't think that there has ever been a social gathering in my adult life in which I meet someone I don't know and they don't ask me the question, "What do you do?" Your work is definitely a big part of your identity. Um, Given the fact that you spend a lot of time there, um, it's a lot of what you have to talk about with strangers and with anyone. So it is important to sort of be doing something for the majority of your time that makes you happy, fulfills you, all of that sort of stuff. Lastly, a lot of friends and acquaintances you are going to meet are going to be from work. I still have several friends from past jobs that I love keeping up with what they're doing, how their kids are doing, what they're doing at work, what they're doing in all of their hobbies. So these are just a few of the reasons why, yes, it can be good, to use sort of the concept of vocation as a career finding tool. But there are also some additional pressures that can come from synonymizing vocation and career work. Um, some questions here. What if the work I feel called to do doesn't pay well enough for what I need? What if there isn't enough demand for the work that I feel called to do? What if, I studied to do something that I love and then I can't find a job? What if I'm passionate about multiple kinds of work? This is a question that it rings really true for me. Um, I have a lot of varied interests, and picking one to, choose and have that as my career for the rest of my life was a really scary idea. If I'm supposed to go to college to find a good career, does that mean I need to know what I love and what I want to do for the rest of my life before I graduate high school? How scary of a question is that for a 17, 18-year-old kid? Just some things to consider. How many of you have ever heard this question before? Everybody, probably. I have, and it scared me. It scared me good. What if I stop loving something? What if I find out that between all of the things that I love, I didn't pick the right thing to do for my career? Other than those reasons to worry, um, here are a few other things to consider. Um, I think that we have a really good setup in our current world to get about half of the equation right. Few points here. We do rely on a lot of essential workers and jobs to keep our world running. And a whole lot of these jobs aren't super pleasant, aren't things that somebody would say they have a deep gladness in doing. I'm not going to give specific examples because, sometimes people may really, really love those jobs that a lot of people think of as dirty jobs. Um, but it's an important question to consider. Also, there exists very fulfilling and needed work that can be found in fields that don't pay a living wage. Um, I have several friends that studied particularly the humanities, who are so passionate about helping the people that they help, and they do such good work, and they can barely put food on the table. So, considering these realities, um, it really doesn't make sense to synonymize vocation with career because it's not really fair for those who, maybe don't have generational wealth, who are passionate about work in these low-paying fields. Things to consider. If you haven't built the bottom of the pyramid, you can't build the top. This is one of my very favorite visuals to kind of explain this concept. So, of course, before we can think of fulfillment, we have to prioritize safety and practicality. If you are worried about keeping a roof over your head, or if you're food insecure, or if you've got, any number of challenges going on that are affecting your life financially, you're going to prioritize a career or a job that pays more over one that you might love or something that would bring you that deep gladness, that fulfillment, that satisfaction. And if your career is supposed to equal your vocation, you might feel like you can't find your vocation, or maybe you're doing it wrong. I'll be honest with you here. I generally enjoy being an engineer. I like the problem solving, the teamwork, the opportunity to help others. It's awesome. But there were a lot of times during my stint in industry that I wasn't that happy. The job paid the bills, that's for sure. I was very focused on practicality as a young woman, as a young single woman. Um, and so the job paid the bills. That checked that box, the practicality box. But the work that I was assigned could be grueling at worst and unsatisfying on average. A lot of the reason why I came to North Park, why I was doing, kind of that soul searching, was because I realized that Madalynn, the professional musician, had more of a spark and had more to offer the world in turn than Madalynn, the entry-level engineer with little opportunity for growth. So I'm really grateful to have had the opportunity to get my finances in check with that first job. Um, and that kind of met that, physiological needs, safety needs base of the pyramid. Um, and now that I have that solid foundation, I have the ability to focus on more things that bring me joy. Um, but the caveat there is that took a lot of soul searching. I had to think really, really hard and convince myself that it wasn't too late for me to change what I was doing, even though I'm still in my late 20s, due to the norm and the kind of easiest way to sustain yourself being to pick something, preferably something that pays a really good wage, and just stick with it. So, now that I've talked about doom and gloom with you for about 10, 15 minutes, I want to give you some sort of action items. So if you're still kind of searching, trying to figure out, what it is that you want to do, how do you navigate this system, these misconceptions, etc.? I propose that we should rethink the concept of vocation and reframe it in a way that it is dynamic. That is, vocation or what you are called to do in the world is something that can change as time goes on. Maybe it's not one career that you must choose and then do that for the rest of your life. What you are called to do is something that brings you joy and something that meets a need in the world. That's it. My favorite thing to think about when I get overwhelmed with kind of the expectations and the pressures to figure out what it is that I'm meant to do, what I'm going to do, is to generalize the concept, right? I like to circle back to that first definition, the Merriam-Webster, of the word vocation. It's a summons or a strong inclination to a particular state or course of action. And I like this one better than the ones that mention work or career or occupation because I feel that it associates the term vocation with less pressure to find the thing and stick to it, right? So these are things that I would suggest to kind of reframe the mindset around vacation. That's two. Vocation. So, for those of you saying, okay, but I've got it figured out. I've done the life thing, I'm comfortable where I am. How can I help other people? I've got some information for you too. I would encourage you to encourage others to reframe vocation as a topic. Vocation is dynamic. It doesn't have to be one big exciting thing that you have this epiphany and decide that that's what you need to do for the rest of your life. There's no pressure to figure it out. And it doesn't have to be your job. It can be volunteering. It can be a hobby. It can be something that you just want to invest some time into because it helps the world and it brings you joy. Another thing that you can do is to advocate for positive social change that will allow all people the time and the resources to pursue their vocation. And I want to leave you with this. Our shared vocation is to serve the world in the most effective way that we can in the present moment. That's it. That's the way that has helped me, that I've been able to kind of help others, to kind of think about this in not such a scary way. So, if you take anything away from today, I want it to be this. Your vocation can change. You can't be doing it wrong because, you're just living your life. And as long as you are seeking to serve the world in the most effective way that you can at this time, you can't be doing it wrong. And that's all I've got for you guys today. Um, any questions? Not sure how this is supposed to go.
Yeah, absolutely. Feel free to ask Madalynn questions or comments or reflections that you have from the presentation. This is a great time for some discussion. I know that was definitely thought provoking for me. So,
This was wonderful. I wish I'd heard it 60 years ago. Thank you.
Thank you.
Um,
Anybody?
thank thank you so much for the amazing different angle to look at vocation. I really enjoyed the dynamic part. It's definitely enlightening and insightful. The other curious question I have, because you talked about the vocation as a calling, as something summons you to do things and to be useful for the world. My question is, what's a statistic in United States? Because I'm from different part of the world, like, because people pick the vacation based on, as you said, satisfaction. We need to satisfy our basic needs. Yes. So what's a statistic of the people in United States who just like do the things as a calling? Like, that vacation is a calling. That's the question.
Yeah. Um, I
Thank
haven't been able to find a number. Um, but I mean, just observing kind of the world around me, um, I don't think that it's a huge percentage. Um, I wish that it were more obviously like a broader group of people who are just feeling joyful in what they're doing in life. But yeah, I haven't been able to find a number. I'd be interested to study that a little more.
Yeah, I'm asking because I'm a therapist and I have a lot of kids and teenagers. Of course, they think about, okay, this is the vacation I would love to pursue or a career to pursue. And most of them based on how much I can make. Because
Hmm.
like, because there is a materialistic and financial curiosity. Like, I would love to get some of the range when it comes to the income. Yes. So, and then I would just share some of the statistic, some of the research, how it's been, I think, in the United States, that some of the people, they started their career journey after high school. Some people went they pick the career where they can make more money, and then the other choice was, that was my calling. And then after 10 years they made the same amount of money, but the group which is like have picked that career related to the money, they suffer it because they don't like what they do. So I'm exaggerating, of course, but there is the definitely learning curve. But
Yeah.
no matter how I educate my teenagers, anyway, they pick career where they can make more money. That's the tendency. That's the kind of like a stream in the whole world, because we're living in a big consumerism era. So yeah, and I got recently a 9 years old boy, and I said like, "Wow, you have such a great detective mind." And I said like, "Oh, probably you're gonna be an amazing, might be detective guy." And he said, "No, I don't want to be a detective. But he's definitely amazing when it comes to the analytical mind." He said, "I'm gonna be YouTuber." Okay. I thought like, okay, he's not the first child who says like, I'm gonna be YouTuber. I said like, okay, can you say what are you gonna do? He said like, I'm gonna play video games and then I comment that video games. So I thought like, okay, yeah. So that was like that was my purpose to realize his vocation, but I catch his mind. So yeah, that's the kind of like an interesting thing. And I really like what you said at the beginning. That's the luxury to do what you like and what's your calling. Yes, that's the luxury. Yeah, I agree. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Maddie. I just have a really random question.
Hello.
Hey.
Sure.
Um, how would you suggest people navigate that are, how would I describe this as like in the middle? So maybe they don't absolutely despise their job, but they don't necessarily believe it's completely their calling. But it's
Sure.
not that it's not their calling. It's like that it's kind of in between.
Hmm.
Have any suggestions for people who feel like they're in the middle of that journey?
Yeah, absolutely. Um, that's a really good question. And I think that that's probably most people. Um, because I don't think that people are necessarily, staying, doing work for a lot of their days that, they hate, or that is just totally not practical. I think that a lot of people kind of fall in the middle. And what I would say, I mean, it really depends, like on a case by case basis, like what specifically it is that they're doing, how flexible it might be, how much autonomy they might have in their work. That's a big thing that I could also talk about forever is autonomy at work. I am not an HR professional by any stretch of the imagination, but my husband is. And I think a lot about this concept um because that's something that satisfaction can hinge on too. Like if you have a full-time job that is, flexible to the extent that it gives you the opportunity to also pursue things that you love, like outside of work, then that's really awesome. And if the work is something that you don't mind, doing for a lot of the day, and they pay you well, I would suggest sticking with it if they give you the also the opportunity to do these other things. One of the reasons why I left my job in industry is because it was not super flexible, and I had all of these musical aspirations that I had, and you know realistically, even though I really loved all of the overtime pay and all of that good stuff, like being a manufacturing engineer in the factory from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. is not super conducive to also being able to like go rehearse for something and have performances on the weekend and that sort of thing. So that's kind of and I think like I've shared this with you, but yeah, that's part of the reason why I ended up working here full time at North Park because the community is just so supportive of all of these extra, activities that I get up to on a day to day. So, yeah.
Great, thank you.
Mhm.
Awesome questions, everyone. Does anyone have any other questions for Maddie or reflections from the discussion that we're having? All right. Well,
Madalynn,
oh,
I just want to say thank you. I too really appreciated the dynamic permission you gave us to look at vocation with, and also just the comment that our other participant highlighted about it being really a luxury to be able to kind of find this perfect fit. And so to look at the aspects of life that we're called to with vocation, I'm a mom who's for the most part really loved what I've gotten to do in life. I trained for one thing and then totally after training for one thing, went into the nonprofit world. And yet I'm grateful for my training and grateful for the nonprofit faith world I've lived in. And now have a 17-year-old daughter and a 19-year-old son. And so we're very much in this like, oh my goodness, this landscape has shifted so much.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that's some of what I've appreciated. If I can ask a question, and I don't know if how comfortable you feel with this, but let me throw it out there and see your thoughts. Um, Any thoughts about how discipleship itself and even our view of our relationship with Christ plays into considering vocation? I mean, certainly he is the one who calls us if we have that faith lens. Um, but even as a parent, I've been thinking about, there's so many societal pressures, let's just say on my son who's off at university to get that job that will pay the bills because he knows I am not going to do that with my husband indefinitely. And yet, that's easier to talk about than even talking about the and what are we called to. So I don't know, just if there's any thoughts from the perspective of someone who's in their 20s on your wrestling and or certain things that were helpful as you weighed that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, um, gosh, and I appreciate that this is like the North Park community allows me to talk about faith in this way too. Like I try to generalize this as most as I can so everybody can benefit from it. But I mean, personally, as I've been kind of like grappling with this subject, prayer has been a huge, huge part of it. And I think that one of the specific things that, you know, I so that sort of helped me um was just to think about things in the perspective of, okay, why is this happening? Like what could God be saying to me, in this moment? And one of those big moments was when I decided to come and to leave industry and come work at North Park. I was kind of struggling, to be honest, because I started my studies fall of 23. So not last fall, but the fall before. And so I'm actually, well, sort of living between Chicago and the Quad Cities, which is like the other side of Illinois. And so I was commuting for classes because my job wanted me to be in person for a good bit of it. And um, there was a time last spring when, you know, my job was becoming less and less flexible with me being, gone a couple days a week. And, I had been wrestling a lot with, the fact that, the people that I look up to, people that I admire and that I say I want to be like them one day, they were here. Um, and, you know, I said, okay, maybe that's God telling me that, I should look for something else. And literally, it was a couple days after I started seriously looking that my current job got posted. So it was like, honestly, I just think that like looking at those things, especially, it can kind of be hard in the moment, but looking at those things kind of in hindsight, as you get past a struggle can really help you put into perspective, like just how much everything is gonna work out for you, right? So that's kind of the special joy that I take in this topic, like from a Christian perspective. But yeah,
Thank you, Madalynn.
absolutely.
That's very true. It took me a long time to decide what I wanted to do, but I finally found the what for me was the perfect job. And looking back on all the steps, it was a beautiful picture of how I'd been led, even though I
Yeah,
didn't really see it while it was happening.
right.
Amazing. Well, thank you everyone for sharing your stories and asking Madalynn some questions. I'm gonna just hit